Informative and unpredictable, testing the limits like only we can. From Span Enterprises in Rock Hill, South Carolina, it's the Bandit Room.
Welcome to the Bandit Room. I'm Charles and I'm joined by our distinguished panelists, Amber and Brian. Thank you for joining us today. We've got a few topics to burn through today, starting with ELDs. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the transportation industry, the electronic logging device mandate that they're trying to put in place in December, right? And correct me if I'm getting anything incorrect on this, but so the law currently is that all heavy vehicles in the future need to be equipped with electronic logging devices in order to track all of their miles, all of their movements, in order to better capture their hours and also where they are. So there's going to be obviously pros and cons to this issue. There's a lot of trucking groups that are being very vocal in opposing this regulation, where there are also some relatively powerful groups that are obviously for it, and they've got their way. They're making this happen. These regulations are coming to the trucking industry. Pros and cons, you know, that's going to help you be able to better track your miles, better track your hours. But on the negative side, you know, your company is going to have, or whoever you're driving for, or even the government is going to have total access as to where exactly you are at any given time. So some people feel like this is an invasion of privacy. Some people go so far as to say it's against the law. There's a lot of different sides here. So anybody want to talk about that?
So actually, we've just gotten a report that they are still trying to push back the ELD mandate for another 2 years. So people are still fighting this.
But Congress has shut it down 4 times now, right?
Yes, that is correct.
And it's a bipartisan.
Right. They're gaining sponsorship though. So they've got 49 companies or sponsors, associations who are signing this bill. So some of them are agricultural, American Farm Bureau, Lucas Oil. There's lots of different associations that are now signing to have the ELD mandate moved for another 2 years. So there's a lot of people who don't want this, who think it's a total invasion of privacy, and think that it's just another way that the government is going to mandate their business.
That's interesting. Now, but Congress, indeed, they have shut it down. Do you really think that there's a chance they could further delay it? I mean, we've been in this business, all 3 of us have been in this business for years now, and the consistent line has been, it's coming, but we'll delay it. It's coming, but we'll delay it. OOIDA has done a great job pushing it back, trying to push it as much as they can. The ATA is fighting on the other side, trying to push for it. Their CEO was very vocal recently about being so pleased that Congress voted for it again. Is there any hope of this thing getting delayed anymore?
I mean, the way I look at it, I think there's a small glimmer of hope. There is some co-sponsors, which is good, but I think they still have a long road ahead if they really want to get that completely repealed and pushed back, you know, before December 18th, which is a couple months from now.
Well, and really this says that the legislation seeks to amend the current ELD implementation date by 2 years until December of 2019, allowing more time to further evaluate the readiness of the mandate. So even just pushing it back and kind of gaining more knowledge about the industry and how it can effectively help it.
I think it's kind of funny that we're at a stage now with the Congress that we have and the administration that we have, where we're about to see a massive regulation take place to one of the most vulnerable groups in America, the transportation industry. I mean, there's so many truckers that are already overburdened by regulation, and many people would say on the right, they would say many unnecessary regulation. They're saying the hours of service is really the problem, the ELDs, that's another major problem, and this regulation is going to roll in on the watch of the people, the anti-regulators that are in charge right now. So what do they really stand for? They're obviously trying to roll back the EPA as much as they can, but they're not doing the same thing for the transportation industry. They're just not doing it. I mean, we have a bill with some support behind it, but
it's getting no play really.
It's still not getting play. I mean, they've shut it down 4 times. The general knowledge is going to happen. It's already too late for a lot of people in the transportation industry whose companies have already mandated that they go ahead and have these devices in their vehicles. So it seems like it's too late.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of money behind this too, and they've been talking about it for years, and there's a lot of these huge trucking companies that are highly invested in this already. So there's a lot to gain to continue to move forward with. Obviously, safety is the #1 issue, but there are some positives to it. I mean, I know most truck drivers don't want anything to do with it, but I've talked to guys who said just having it in my truck eases the burden when I get pulled over by a DOT officer. As of right now, it's not mandated, but I've had guys tell me they get pulled over, and just because they have it, the guy gives them not a hard time as they usually would. So that's a benefit. Obviously, you said it'll track your miles for IFTA, so that makes that a lot easier. Yeah. And then really I think the biggest issue, and maybe the guys don't like to talk about it as much, but nothing's really changed with the ELD. There's still the hours of service level. This just enforces it to a point where you really can't cheat the system anymore. So I think that's going to change a lot of things across the board.
Well, and you kind of touched on it with IFTA, and that may be one of the areas that it improves. Is IFTA is a huge burden every quarter. And if you're keeping track of your mileage and your gallons of fuel purchased the old-fashioned way with trying to keep track of your receipts and writing down your mileage, that's just a huge mess, and it has been. And so this is one way that it's going to keep track of all of that, your mileage for you, and you'll just be able to run a report at the end of the quarter. So even though there are some negative points, that is one of the positive aspects of the ELD mandate.
And not to mention the cost of this whole program to anybody that it affects. I know there's some people that are going to be exempt from it if they're in older vehicles, things like that. But for the most part, I believe they say the average is going to be, it's going to cost around $500 per year per truck. And that adds up for people with 1, 2, 3, even more. It's a massive cost. We had people that just went to the truck show in Dallas lately, and there's probably 50 providers for electronic logging devices. And there's no real way of knowing who is the ultimate person to go with. Who can we really trust with this highly sensitive, highly invasive technology that you're going to be putting in your vehicle and relying on a daily basis? So it's really crazy. But that's what we have to say on the topic. If you have further comments you'd like to add, please comment below on the video. We'd love to hear them, and maybe we'll read them on the air. With that being said, speaking of huge major disasters, let's talk about some natural disasters that we've had lately. We've recently been hit by 3 huge hurricanes that have hit the United States and the neighboring islands, and also there was a massive earthquake in Mexico. So there's really some crazy stuff going on. Yeah. One thing I think we're losing everything to the media coverage these days based on what one person may be saying, but this situation in Puerto Rico is really insane. It's catastrophic down there, and I don't think there's being enough talked about it. We're lucky enough when we live in the mainland that if a storm's coming, we have the luxury of being able to move away from the storm. They didn't have that when the hurricane came through in Puerto Rico. The same thing goes for supplies. We are fortunate enough to easily transport supplies thanks to our fantastic trucking community. That whenever a disaster hits, trucks are there the next day to be able to restock and help the people out that are trapped there. That's not as easy in Puerto Rico. Their ports were terribly damaged during that storm, and I believe the ships are just now coming in with power and generators and water and things like that. These necessities where, to my understanding, 80% of the infrastructure there has just been decimated. People are living without power. There's no fix in sight for the next few months with that. It's just a crazy situation. So keep that in mind. There are government efforts underway. I think the Coast Guard is involved. The Army Corps of Engineers is working down there. I've seen that to help repair the infrastructure that they've got going on. There are tons of great organizations doing work as well. I definitely wouldn't just rely on the efforts that are currently going on to be able to actually help these people, because I mean you can live right here in the United States in Flint and still not have good water. Yeah. So I definitely wouldn't rely on just the government efforts that are underway. So if there's lots of great organizations that are doing work in Puerto Rico right now. You can look them up. I think GuideStar has a good website where you can kind of evaluate charities based on how they're doing. So be sure to check that out and see some good organizations that you can help out.
And I think not just in Puerto Rico, but Texas is still, having a huge, hard time rebuilding and repairing what was lost in the floods, and also in Florida.
Yep.
And so any of those organizations that you go on and you search and you can help, and even giving of your time.
All right, well, I think that concludes this segment. Thank you for joining us. Quick word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back after this.
TruckLogix is the complete operations management program that includes every tool necessary to improve efficiency for transportation fleets and owner-operators. With the dispatch management feature, every detail of your dispatches can be quickly entered and recorded for your records and can be accessed from the TruckLogix app. TruckLogix is integrated with ProMiles, so you can plan the best route possible for your trip, based on the fastest or most gas-efficient way. Using ProMiles and your trip sheet, TruckLogix automatically keeps up with you if the totals per jurisdiction and quarterly reports that make filing your return quick and easy. TruckLogix also serves as one central location to store everything that's important to your business, from compliance records, maintenance schedules, electronic driver logs, income expenses, and more. For more information, visit trucklogix.com.
And we're back to talk about natural disasters a little more. A topic that gets commonly brought up whenever storms like this happen is the idea of price gouging. Whenever supplies get low, people panic. People go to the gas station, they go to buy water, and they stock up. They need to, they get the supplies they need. Once the supplies start running low, there's reports of price gouging across the board. There was recently an article in Quartz kind of arguing the merits of price gouging. On the surface, it sounds like a relatively bad thing. It sounds like it's the idea of taking advantage of people in a bad situation. But there is a legitimate argument that it is merely supply and demand, just on a different level. So that's what I'd kind of like to talk about a little bit today. So it sounds bad, price gouging. I'll give you that. It sounds bad, and in certain situations, it is bad. If you're charging somebody $500 for a bottle of water, that's just ridiculous.
I'm sorry, $500?
$500 for a bottle.
That's bad.
That's price gouging on a Martin Shkreli level. But if there was price gouging to a certain degree, you could argue that you wouldn't have the issues of scarcity that you get in these situations. So like in Florida, when people were needing to get out of there, everybody fueled up their cars, drove out. If gas was a little higher, maybe, if somebody knew they were going to be hunkered down in Florida, they weren't necessarily going to be leaving, they weren't just buying gas before they ran out, then maybe these stations wouldn't have run out of gas. Or the same thing goes with water. You go to a grocery store to buy water, and they're sold out because everybody in town has bought cases. That even happened here in South Carolina. People were just stocking up on water. We weren't in the direct path of the storm, but it happened. People bought water, and then people ran out of water.
I was a direct victim of that.
You were a direct victim of water.
I guess I just wasn't up to the times on the massive catastrophic event that was going to happen in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and I just went to the grocery store, and God forbid I buy some water because it's gone.
Because it's gone. But there's the argument that if they had maybe charged a little bit more for that water, it would have discouraged the people that didn't really need the water from buying it.
Yeah, and maybe I could have bought some water, Charles.
Maybe you could have bought some. See, you're a direct victim of this.
Yeah.
So, and the same thing happens to you, and you go to an amusement park, you're going to pay a boatload of money for a soda. You go to an airport, you're going to pay a lot for water, soda, anything. It's going to be more expensive because of simple supply and demand. You're in a
and they hold the right to do that. It's their business. They can charge what they want.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a little different when we're talking about life and death.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Especially in the face of a disaster that's coming right for you.
Yeah.
I have a couple thoughts in that. I feel like charging more for a necessity when their lives are in danger, I really feel like it's not right, but at the same time, maybe putting a different kind of cap on it. So instead of raising the price of a case of water, maybe you can only purchase 2 cases of water at that particular store or whatever, and so that it would last longer for people who are coming to get it, instead of 5 people purchasing 50 cases of water.
Right.
My other thought is, this is why you prepare, and everybody likes to make fun of the people who prepare. What are they called?
Doomsday preppers.
Doomsday preppers. But you know what? They're not rushing out to the store, and they're not without water because they have 50 gallons in their basement.
It's got, you get the last minute doomsday preppers that decide, all of a sudden I'm going to start prepping for a disaster.
One of the spaghetti noodles has it coming over.
Yeah.
For all we know, they're turning around and selling that stuff back to people at a higher price.
That's true. You can buy it while it's cheap.
That's right.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So I think there's an argument to be made that if say gas was a little higher, then there would be more gas available. So if somebody who really needs to buy it, they would have the ability to buy it. Because what's better, like no water or slightly more expensive water?
Well, it depends on if you have the money to buy the slightly. What if so and so down the road, they're not wealthy and they can't afford a bottle of water for $50?
No, water's pretty cheap.
Then
I mean,
what
you get a
happens?
case of water for
$500.
Oh, $500. I'm sorry. What happens if they can't buy that $500? Then they have nothing.
I've been shopping at the wrong place for water.
You have.
Okay.
You need to go to Publix.
Yeah.
We're shopping.
Free
as
ad
a
for
pleasure.
Fucking Publix in this?
Tell us what you think. Price gouging, good or bad? Necessary evil or virus from hell? I don't know. Tell us what you think. Speaking of things I'd like to take a knee on, this weekend has been pretty crazy as far as I'd like to take a knee on the whole conversation, honestly. I don't feel comfortable talking about it. I'm just going to say that.
It's a very polarizing topic. There's two very clear defined sides on it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, Amber, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Amber, please. Let me know if you have any thoughts on it.
Let me just tell you what I have to do. Except my phone just died.
I'm somewhat familiar with what he said. So he says politics don't belong in sports, I think, is kind of his stance on it.
Well, I think the point he was trying to make is football has always been something that can unite Americans.
Right.
And so it's been a sport where no matter what side of the fence you are on politically, you come together and your team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You all love the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or the Carolina Panthers or whatever your team is. What he is saying is that now it's not, he feels like now it's not that unity, that even at the game, it's creating, what was the word he used? Like a division, even in a game that brought unity to America.
Something I thought was interesting was a tweet put out by Dale Earnhardt Jr., funny enough. It was a quote from JFK saying, "All Americans are granted rights to peaceful protests. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable."
Speaking of Dale Earnhardt, though, the NASCAR in general said they deemed it
Yeah, they said they're
not
gonna.
gonna happen.
Yeah, anybody who does any sort of protest.
So I thought it was interesting that he came out and said something like
Against that, yeah.
kind of against that. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. This has been, this first started like over a year ago.
Yeah, I think a
the
year and
first
a
guy
half,
took a
yeah.
knee, right? And all of a sudden, someone tells you can't do something, and now all of a sudden the whole NFL, like they haven't had really anything to say about it, anything for or against it, up until this weekend, and then you have the owners and everyone taking the knee, and it's really just it really was not about what the cause was initially about. It's just about, hey, you can't tell me what to do.
Yeah,
I'm gonna kind of rub this in your face a little bit.
Yeah, I think he's definitely onto something. That was a really good rant by Shannon Sharp. Is that
I think so. Yeah.
Shannon Sharp. Anyway, check it out. But yeah, I think you're onto something about the billionaire owners of these teams didn't like the president telling them who they can fire, how they can fire somebody.
I mean, these are guys who donated money to him, millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And as soon as told them what to do, they were like, now I'm gonna say something.
Yeah.
So what are they really standing for? It's kind of the question.
That's true. They didn't say anything back then. They didn't say anything to anything else, inflammatory that may have been spoken. So, it's when he directly attacks them that they start reacting to it. So there is something to say about that.
I think we want to just point out that, you know, in general, we all respect the military. I think that goes without saying. You know, the way I understand it, that's not what this was initially about. But I can certainly see where, you know, if you served or if you have a family member who may have died, you know, in combat, that you know that you could find that offensive. So, but you know, we, I think, as a whole, are in support of the military.
Yeah, exactly. We're in support of the military, support of the United States flag, and all the great things.
You can have different opinions on the meaning matter, but
yeah,
you know.
I think we can all be grateful for the country we live in and the liberties that we are all afforded based on our great pleasure of being here. America. Tell us what you think. Please leave your comments below. We'd be happy to read them, and we'll take a look at those, and maybe it'll be read on air next week. So stay tuned for more on the Bandit Room.